For critical information ignored by the mainstream media, log on to davidicke.com/headlines now.
Broadcasting live from the great city of Manchester, England. This is the Richie Allen Show on davidicke.com.
And it is Sunday. It is the 10th of... Let me just turn off the monitor there. Bit of feedback going on. It's the 10th of April 2016. Good morning to you. If you're listening live, it is Sunday View Live in association with davidicke.com/headlines. My name is Richie Allen and I am live from Manchester in the United Kingdom, where the sun has got his hat on. Hip hooray. It's glorious out there. Wonderful, wonderful morning. Frosty to begin with, but it's turning into a wonderful day here in the great city itself. So I hope you're having a good weekend. Hope all is going well. All is well in your world. Sunday View in association with davidicke.com/headlines is basically a quickish review of the Sunday papers, and then digging down deep into one or two of the stories. As usual, do check out davidicke.com/headlines, because much of what I talk about here today over the next 55 minutes to 60 minutes will be dealt with in great detail and great analysis on davidicke.com. All the information about David's World Tour is there. There's a lovely meme, a lovely image with all the dates and all the cities where he's going to be. If you're going to be anywhere near one of these cities, get a ticket, go and spend a whole day with David Icke. It'll change your life. Very dramatic, I know, but it will. It really will. Phantom Self details on there as well, David's new book. We are live on Fab Radio 2, Fab Radio International here in Manchester, on the TuneIn app and on richieallen.co.uk. Had a lovely day yesterday in Stockport with friends of ours, Hayley and Brian. Carolyn and myself met our friends in Stockport, had a lovely look around a great old industrial town, went to the hat factory. It was brilliant. It was actually quite nice, I have to say. Hats are not my thing. You would think they are with the bald bonce that I have, the big baldy head in me, like. But no, it was good. We didn't get to see the air raid shelter there, which I'm told is very good. But we had a great time. We went further down the Buxton Road then, had a lovely bit of late afternoon supper. Late afternoon lunch, I should say, not supper, early supper, in a lovely bar, lovely pub there. I think it was called the Dog and Partridge. Great old British pub grub. So had a lovely day yesterday. It was lovely to get out and about, and it's nice to meet friends. So it is. So then, shall we crack on, because time does have a habit of getting away from me when I make this particular programme. The Sunday newspapers here in the UK are dominated by David Cameron and his financial affairs. I'll come to Cameron in a little bit more detail. I know you're sick of it. I know. There's one or two more interesting angles, though, I think I can explore with you. Okay? I promise I'm not going to bore the bejesus out of you. I think there are one or two more interesting angles, maybe not yet explored in the independent media, about Cameron and his affairs, that we'll get into. By the way, as it's live, tweet at Richie Allen Show. That's the Twitter handle. As your tweets come in, I will read them out. I'll be delighted to hear from you. And you know I mean that. I want to say hi to Himanshi Munjal, my great friend who's listening in India. She's been tweeting, lamenting the fact that some of the royal family are visiting that great country. I suggested sending the elephants after them. Throw a few rotten vegetables if you can get close enough. But beware when you do that, you might get shot. These things do happen. So maybe you might not want to do that. Catherine Curtis tweeted me just before coming on air, Richie, maybe we should stop paying the TV licence in view of the media blackout of yesterday's protests, as it's so obviously biased. Catherine, you know what I say about that? Not because I'm scared of Ofcom or any regulatory authority. I'm not really, but I don't believe in advising anybody to do anything. I don't pay my TV licence. I don't. What you do and what anybody else wants to do is their own business. I refuse to pay it. On moral grounds, similar to the ones you just mentioned. Catherine, thanks for that. People, do what you want to do. Make sure you're covered, though. Make sure you know what the legalities are before you make any decision. Don't let anybody in the independent media tell you what to do. Ever. Okay? It's not a good idea. Good morning, Marco, and good morning, Aunt Sally. Lovely to know you're up and about this glorious Sunday morning, he says, as the clouds just cover the sun momentarily. I'm looking out a window, you see. There's all my computers, my broadcast mixing desk. Just beyond that, there's a window. It's nice out. Yeah, no, anyway. Right, David Cameron. I'm just going to read you the headlines. The Sunday Telegraph: Cameron in line to avoid inheritance tax of £80,000. Right? They're basically saying there are more calls for scrutiny of Cameron's financial affairs, saying that he received 200 grand from his mother after his father died. That will not be subject to inheritance tax if she lives for 2 more years. That's in the Sunday Telegraph. More about that in a minute. The Sunday Mail: Cameron tax bill dodge on mother's 200k gift. New row over historic decision to publish the PM's tax return after it's revealed family avoided 70 grand in death duties. They said 80 grand in the Telegraph, 70 in the Mail. What's 10 grand amongst friends? The Sunday Mail calls the arrangement involving the gift from Cameron's mother a dodge. It is a dodge. To be fair, though, a lot of people do that. But it's a dodge, right? And the Mail says he faces a fresh row as many papers switch their attention from dealings involving the Prime Minister's father to the money he received from Mummy. Sunday Mirror: Cameron's 200k gift from Mummy. She gave him money because 300k from Dad was not enough. How could you live on 300 grand? Payment to help her millionaire son avoid £80,000 in death duties. Again, in the interest of balance, Cameron would be one of thousands who would have done something like that, right? Sunday People: Cam Mum gave him extra 200k. Yeah. The Observer: Cameron. The Sunday Times: Cameron. The Sunday Express: Cameron. And the Star: hospitals X-rated porn on television. Get in there. That's the sort of hospital I want to be staying at. The Sunday edition of the Daily Star reports that a mother-to-be was angered when hospital television showed a pornographic film as she waited to be seen by doctors. And she's complaining. All right, okay. I'm out of order. That mustn't have been nice. And that's what the Sunday Star, or the Star on Sunday, is telling you. This Sunday, April the 10th. The 10th. So, I'm not going to dwell on that because I'm going to dig kind of down in there to Cameron in a few minutes' time. But I'm not going to start with Cameron. I'm going to start with something which is designed to drive people like you and people like me up the wall. Designed to make us rant and rave and grit our teeth and really get angry. Here we go. Sunday Mail. 3 stories in the Sunday Mail all about anti-Semitism in society. We'll start with this one. The former Archbishop of Canterbury, Lord Carey, has warned Jeremy Corbyn he will be unfit to govern unless he eradicates anti-Semitism from the Labour Party. In what the Sunday Mail describes as an outspoken speech, Carey said that hatred of Jews persisted in dark corners of Britain, including within Labour ranks and at top universities. Carey's comments came as the Labour leader was facing growing criticism that he has failed to tackle anti-Jewish remarks made by activists, including his brother. Dun, dun, dun. What's Piers been saying? We'll come back to Piers. Lord Carey is a vice president of the Council of Christians and Jews. And he said recent reports of anti-Semitic language used by Labour Party members, often in the form of an attack on Israel, had been shocking. He made these comments, did Carey, from a synagogue in New York, where he said one activist had been quoted as saying, "We invented Israel when saving the Jews from Hitler," who now seems to be their teacher. I don't have a problem with that, do you? Somebody said, "We invented Israel when saving the Jews from Hitler," who now seems to be their teacher. I don't see anything anti-Semitic about that, but I will come back to it. I can understand it pissing Jewish men and women right off. But if the cap fits, darling, fucking wear it. We'll come back to that. He claimed these had echoes even at Oxford University, where the co-chairman of the Student Labour Group, which is the largest in the country, resigned after the club decided to endorse Israel Apartheid Week. You will not have an opinion. Not least if your opinion is critical of Israel. Alex Chalmers, the man involved, claimed he was disturbed by the attitude of members, the man involved in forcing the resignation of the co-chairman. He said he was disturbed by the attitude of members, whether it be members of the executive throwing around the term Zio, a term for Jews, with casual abandon, expressing their solidarity with Hamas and explicitly defending their tactics of indiscriminately murdering civilians, or claiming most accusations of anti-Semitism are just the Zionist crying wolf. Well, they are, of course. Carey went on to say many students in the club have some kind of problem with Jews. We should be alarmed by this. In a civilised country, such language and attitudes shouldn't be tolerated. He didn't want to suggest, did Carey, that the Labour Party was riddled with anti-Semitism. This is just after he suggested that, by the way. But the problems are real enough, and that if Corbyn doesn't take action, he's not ready to govern. Excuse me. In the same newspaper, Michael Foster is a Labour candidate and a man whose family gave £400,000 to the party. Think about that. Arguably bought his way into, a position where he could stand for office for the Labour Party. He wrote an article in the Mail today, a long-winded bullshit rant about what the Labour Party stands for, why it appeals to Jews, and why he's disgusted, and why he is offended, and why he is terrified by what is being said by some members of the Labour Party. And he mentioned Piers Corbyn. This is what he said about Piers Corbyn even. He said, before anyone tries to claim that Piers Corbyn, Jeremy's brother, as if we didn't know, before anyone tries to claim that Piers Corbyn, Jeremy's brother, is no racist, by the way, just read his tweet. And this, dear listener, is the tweet. Zionists can't cope with anyone supporting rights for Palestine. Zionists can't cope with anyone supporting rights for Palestine. That's racism, according to the Daily Mail, in the guise of this Labour plonker whose family gave £400,000 to the party. And then he said, replace Zionist and Palestine with blacks and white South Africa. There's nothing remotely racist about that. This is very sinister. This is about criminalising free speech. And I am telling you, it's the strongest move yet by the Zionist lobby that I have seen in my time as a broadcaster to criminalise criticism of Israel. It's an absolute outrage. The third story in the Sunday Mail today is about a Labour councillor suspended for shockingly offensive anti-Semitic tweets. Now, her tweets are offensive. That is, if she made them. She denies making these tweets or posting these tweets and says that it may very well have been her sister. The woman is Aysegul Gurbuz. I could have pronounced that wrong. If I did, I apologise. Aysegul Gurbuz. She made comments on Twitter. Some of them mentioned Hitler. One tweet apparently written in January 2013 said the Jews are so powerful in the US, it's disgusting. Why was there no outcry in January 2013? I don't understand that. Another one from October 2012 said, Ed Miliband is Jewish, he will never become Prime Minister. Again, why was there no comment on that in 2012? And a tweet in October 2011, allegedly by this Labour councillor, this woman, said Adolf Hitler is the greatest man in history. Why was there nothing made of that in October 2011? Anyway, moving on. Jeremy Corbyn spoke to BBC's Andrew Marr programme. The Andrew Marr show, which airs every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. on BBC One. Now, we'll hear more from Corbyn with Marr shortly or a bit later on. This is Marr asking Corbyn about anti-Semitism in the Labour Party.
Jeremy Corbyn, can I ask you two very quick questions on other subjects, if you don't mind? A lot of criticism, again in the newspapers, I talked to John McDonnell about it last week, of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. Do you not need to say and do more to reassure the Jewish community?
Anti-Semitism is absolutely abhorrent and wrong. Anyone that commits any act of anti-Semitism that makes any anti-Semitic remark is auto-excluded from the party, and an inquiry follows immediately. We have suspended and we will suspend any member that behaves in that way. Inquiries are going on the cases that have been referred to us. Right. We're absolutely resolute on this. There is no place for any type of racism of any sort within our party, and I will ensure that it is rooted out where it exists. But I have to say, it is a very small number of cases over the whole country. We are dealing with it.
Jeremy Corbyn is a wretched coward who isn't fit to hold any office. That's what I've concluded over recent weeks. Is he a principled, decent man deep down? I think he might well be or might well have been. But he is a sinister, he is a despicable yellow belly. Because a number of the people accused by Zionists of making anti-Semitic comments have never made anti-Semitic comments at all. People like Bob Campbell, who tweeted and wrote about Zionism and what Zionism is and what it does to Gaza and to the Palestinians. Nothing racist, remotely anti-Semitic about anything, Bob Campbell said. I mentioned this during the week, so I won't labour the point. Why is Cameron not attacking these interviewers and asking them to prove to him, to show him absolute evidence of anti-Semitism within the Labour Party? Show it to me. Who's being anti-Semitic? What are they saying exactly? And then go on the offensive. Why won't Jeremy Corbyn do that? More on Jeremy Corbyn a little bit later on. It's 16 minutes past the hour. This is Sunday View Live in association with davidicke.com/headlines. It's time for a little history lesson. Just a little history lesson about Israel. Okay? I have said time and time and time again throughout my, I suppose, career in the independent media, Israel has no legitimate claim to exist as a nation state. It doesn't. It has no historic legal right to exist, and it certainly has no moral right, and it certainly has no moral case for existence. The Israelis tell you that the state of Israel came about because of a biblical statement. Remember Golda Meir? This country exists as the accomplishment of a promise made by God himself. It would be absurd to call its legitimacy into account. Very famous statement by former Prime Minister Golda Meir. This country exists as the accomplishment of a promise made by God himself. It would be absurd to call its legitimacy into account. They refer to God promising Abraham, "Unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the Euphrates." So what they interpret that, the Israelis interpret that as justification for land grab, for mass murder, for genocide of the indigenous people who belong to and have always lived on that land. That's the nonsense, really, that holds Israel together and justifies its people in the form of its military and its government committing unspeakable acts of barbarity on a daily basis. That's what Israel is all about. That's the claim right there. It would be absurd to call Israel's legitimacy into account. The country exists as the accomplishment of a promise made by God himself. And when you look at their other claims to legitimacy, the Sykes-Picot Agreement, signed between Britain and France, and the Balfour Declaration, was basically one of the greatest robberies in the history of the world. Partitioning countries, breaking up the Ottoman Empire after the First World War, breaking international law, because Palestine didn't belong to anybody. The whole thing is a fraud. And by the time, of course, we move up to 1947 and the partition of Palestine, remember, Jews made up 32% of the population at the time in 1947, and they owned 5.6% of the land. Now skip on a couple of years, after genocide, mass murder, torture, tyranny by terrorist organisations like the Haganah, Irgun and the Stern Gang. These were Israeli terrorist groups. Israel, after 1949, had 80% of Palestine and 800,000 non-Jews had been kicked out of their own country. That's Israel. That's Israel right there. But we'll never hear this from Jeremy Corbyn, who apparently used to say stuff like this back in the day. Used to talk about it. But doesn't anymore. Just a little history lesson there. Nothing I said there is untrue. Nothing is conjecture. None of that is my opinion. That is what has happened. The Israeli regime is the greatest threat to security on planet Earth. They are one, along with the Saudi Arabians and possibly the North Koreans, one of the greatest abusers of human rights on planet Earth. Not to mention, this horrendous regime is hiding a nuclear arsenal that's supposed to be absolutely terrifying. Leave Israel alone for now. I'm sick of Israel, to be honest. I'm sick of pathetic broadcasters like Andrew Marr ramming it down Jeremy Corbyn's throat, but I'm even more sick of Corbyn for not having the stomach to take him on and say, no. Yes, there are racists. I come across them on my Facebook page. I accept all friend requests on Facebook. And then I look later on, sometimes I come across stuff posted by people about Jewish people that is genuinely racist, and I delete them. But talking about what Israel does, what it stands for, what Zionism is, it's not racist. Corbyn needs to grow a pair of balls. Stand up to it. 21 minutes past the hour. Do you want to be even more annoyed? No, please leave us alone. I'm going to annoy you anyway. Oh, God. British spies, this coming week, British spies will start to edit sections of the official report into the Iraq war, in a move prompting fears a whitewash is going to take place. And families of those who died in Iraq are expressing those fears today. Spies are going to look at the official report, the Chilcot report, and are going to edit it. This disclosure is that a team from the security services are to start removing sections from the final report, fueled calls for the report to be published in the middle of next month. Don't hold your breath. As many as 150 former ministers, civil servants and military figures could be criticised in the report. The Sunday Telegraph established that a team of national security officials has been prepared to go to the offices of the inquiry next week to start national security vetting process, redacting large swathes of the report. The team met with John Penrose, because he's the minister in charge of the government's response to the report, and they're all set to start their cutting. Snip, 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 snip. The vetting process will inevitably lead to fears, writes the Sunday Telegraph, is that embarrassing findings for civil servants and former or current government ministers will be censored and kept from public view. When will we fucking march to the capital city and throw these people out on their fucking arses? When? Imagine it. Journalist Salman Sheen last week said that we shouldn't be having these discussions anymore about the inquiry. We should be having them in The Hague, where Tony Blair should be.
It's 13 years since the Iraq War was launched. Having an inquiry into an inquiry about an absolutely criminal war that was launched 13 years ago, it begins to look a bit like something out of the thick of it. I believe that he should be having this debate out in The Hague in front of a war crimes tribunal.
Yeah, but would the Chilcot inquiry lead to that road, though? I mean, what sort of impact will this inquiry have once it's released? Would somebody like Tony Blair be really held to account?
It seems unlikely that he's going to be held to account for this. There will, I'm sure, be some criticisms of him, and I'm sure he will get the opportunity to put his response to that. And hopefully, the best I think that could come out of this is that maybe the British government might consider the lessons that they hopefully might learn through this Chilcot inquiry.
Well, this inquiry has now been underway for over 6 years. It was launched by Gordon Brown in 2009, designed to learn the lessons of the conflict. The report was initially set to be published in the autumn of 2011. Before that date was pushed back a year. When it still wasn't published by the summer of last year, families of soldiers killed in the Iraq War threatened legal action. And nearly a year later, they are still waiting.
Yeah. Don't you love all those freedoms that we have, that ISIS and Al-Qaeda and Al-Nusra hate so much, all those freedoms that we have? We have the freedom of our leaders to lie, to cheat, to steal, to murder and to maim, and to do it all with immunity. That's how free we are. I'm going to read a few tweets and I'm going to take a break. 24 minutes past the hour. Loads more to get into. Going to be talking about camera next. Zana is in New Zealand. Thanks, Zana. I'm currently retweeting that. It's done. The partitioning of Palestine and the loss of land by the Palestinians to the Zionist state since 1947. I've just tweeted that. Sean McDonald says, why must every person in power bow to Zionist feelings? 100% genocide and fascism. Greater Israel plan is playing out, says Sean. Karen says, I think Israeli treatment of Palestinians is becoming more and more apparent. People are seeing it for what it is. Good morning, Sue. And good morning, Paul Alawi. How you doing, Paul? Anti-Semitism is unacceptable racism. Criticising the Israeli government is not anti-Semitism, it's pro-humanity. Simple as that, says Paul. Thank you, Paul. Dean Smith says, fair play for everyone protesting to insist Cameron resigns, but they will just substitute one psycho with another. We'll talk about the protests outside Downing Street and in London yesterday. Thanks very much for that, Dean. And the lovely Pippa King, who's a terrific lady, who is going to be on the show again real soon, has been talking to us before about biometrics in schools, about state surveillance, about chips, about tagging. Wonderful woman. Good morning, Pippa. Nice to know you're listening. Check out Pippa at Pippa_King on Twitter. She's listening to Sunday View today. It's nice to know you are. And Himanshi is definitely listening because she's just gotten back to me there. Pele, thanks for your tweet. Kim Erswell, time to remind Corbyn Richie that in a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. Brilliant quote. Great old quote that. Doc says, bang on Richie, but Corbyn has to grow the balls to tell it like it is. I think most would respect it, but he is not seeing. Good morning, Sean Bloor. There was a march yesterday, Richie, and there's a big march next Saturday. Why don't you come, says Sean. Sean, I'll get back to you on that. Lovely to hear from you, by the way. I've got a little vox pop that RT did with some of those protesting in London yesterday. I'll play that for you when we come back from the break. Loads more tweets. This is Sunday View in association with davidicke.com/headlines. My name is indeed Richie Allen. Back in a minute.
Do you want to release the full potential of your soul consciousness and find out how to experience that power in all areas of your life now? Go to livingasyoursoul.com for free guidance with in-depth how-to articles, free healing meditations of creation recordings, free soul solutions, and much, much more. livingasyoursoul.com, making the profound practical.
Have you lost access to important data from a computer hard drive, mobile phone, or other storage device? Maybe you have a broken hard drive containing years of information, or a smartphone that no longer works from which you'd like the pictures, movies, and chats recovered. If you would like to recover data from any type of digital device, including desktop and laptop computers, external hard drives, cameras, smartphones, NAS, and RAID servers, then contact Data Clinic today at dataclinic.co.uk now. You're listening to The Richie Allen Show in association with davidicke.com.
And it's live. It's 28 minutes past the hour. Sunday, the 10th of April 2016. We are live. It's brilliant to be with you. I just want to say a real quick good morning and hello to Patricia Braunschweiler. Patricia, thank you from the bottom of my heart for your constant and consistent and continued support of this programme, which I don't take for granted. I never will. I don't expect it. Thank you so much for it, Patricia. I don't know what else to say, really. There are so many people who support this programme, and I'm stunned by it. I really am. When something is available for free, and people say, "Well, no, I'm going to support it, and I'm going to put some money into the coffers, into the production fund of the programme," it blows me away. And thanks again, Patricia, for all your help. There's so many like you, Jean Ann, Mark Bajerski. Check out markbajerski.com, by the way. Great guy. He'll be back on the programme in a few weeks' time. Looking forward to that. And do check out our sponsors, dataclinic.co.uk. In fact, go to dataclinic.co.uk /Richie Allen Show, because I've got my own page now on Data Clinic. And of course, the lovely Kim Hutchison, livingasyoursoul.com, and her weekly meditations, which are so valuable. I'm really thrilled with that and with their support. And show your appreciation for these people by supporting them, if you can, right? 29 minutes past the hour. Right. By the way, a lot of vegans have been on to me. And I want to mention my friend Chris Piper, who's been around since the beginning of the programme. Chris is a vegan. And he's quite rightly said, Chris, we haven't really dug down into veganism and spoken about it much on the programme. We haven't, which is true. We have asked one or two people to come on, and they chose to decline. And I think one of them chose to decline because I was very honest and said I'm not a vegetarian and I'm not a vegan. But I'm really open to listening to you talking about the meat industry, what meat is, what it does to us, the effect on animals. I'm really, really up for that. So I'm going to try and do something on the programme next week or the week after. I know a lot of people listen to this programme are vegans. I'm well aware of it and I respect it. I really respect it more than I could possibly find the words to say. It has been undercovered. We'll start covering it, all right? Trust me. 1:30. The Sunday Mail, Cameron's tax bill dodge on mother's £200,000 gift. There's a new row, apparently. Ian Cameron left his son David £300,000 when he died in 2010. His mother gave him an extra 200 grand a couple of months later. It meant that he avoided paying inland revenue 70 grand. Right, that would have been in the form of inheritance tax that Cameron would have had to pay on a £500,000 lump sum. But he didn't get 500 grand in a lump sum. He got 300 grand, and Mother Mary, oh Mary, don't you weep, Mary, a few months later, said, right, here's 200 more grand. The people who surround Cameron, the goons that do all these public relations, they've said he's done nothing wrong. Right, it's a big story in the Sunday Mail. You can't miss it. 70 grand tax bill, blah, 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 blah. Have to say this, RT break down very well the Cameron family finances. Have a listen to this report from RT. There are visuals with this, but you don't need the visuals. Listen carefully to the numbers.
Well, so after days of scrutiny, questions were being raised about David Cameron's family wealth. Well, both he and his wife Samantha were born into extremely wealthy families, derived from inheritance and company's ownership. Samantha's mother, Annabelle, set up the furniture company Ochre, while her stepfather, William Waldorf Astor III, is a hereditary peer and director of several companies. Lord Astor also owns 19,000 acres of land on the Scottish island of Jura, which is registered in the British Virgin Islands tax haven. Meanwhile, it's the finances of David Cameron's late father, Ian, that have sparked so much controversy. He was a stockbroker and director at Panmure Gordon before he established Blairmore Holdings. In 2009, Cameron Sr. was estimated to be worth £10 million by the Sunday Times rich list. He passed away in 2012, leaving nearly £3 million in his will, including £300,000 cash to the Prime Minister. However, the will only details the assets of his estate in England and Wales. Offshore investments aren't listed, so questions have remained on just where the majority of Ian Cameron's fortune has ended up.
Brilliant report by RT, absolutely spot on, well done. Now, thousands and thousands of people descended on Downing Street yesterday to protest David Cameron, calling for his resignations after the revelations in the Panama Papers. This got scant coverage in national television news because they are whoring bastards, aren't they, the BBC, the propaganda wing of the British establishment. The Daily Mail and the Mirror covered it to their credit. But outside of that, television news, they're not going to give you a visual picture of that. God forbid it might inspire and encourage others to stand up to these animals. Because that's all they are. Animals. Anyway, RT were there. They spoke to some of the protesters in what's called a vox pop, don't you know? And the vox pop is when you ask the same question to a half a dozen or more people and then you edit the answers together. There you go. Do you want to hear the protesters? Have I got it? I have. Here they are. This is what they had to say.
It's entirely hypocritical for him to be, 2 years ago, claim to be against tax havens and tax evasion and then be guilty of it himself. It's a startling symptom of how corrupt the whole government is.
I'd just like the loopholes to be closed because that would make this country a fairer place to live. that's actually going to make a difference.
Because he's the Prime Minister of the country, he should be leading by example. If I or you were to not pay our taxes and hide them off in tax havens, we'd probably go to prison, whereas he hasn't.
He did say he paid his tax, though, and he did sell these shares before he became Prime Minister. So, actually, he hasn't done anything technically wrong.
Well, of course he's going to say that, isn't he? Because he doesn't want to be sent to prison or look like he's in a bad light or anything negative.
Oh, Jesus. Right, I'm going to read a couple of tweets and then I'm going to tell you about these people. I'm going to tell you about Ian Dale, LBC's biggest dickhead. He was on the Andrew Marr show this morning as well. World-class asshole, Ian Dale. Tell you more about him in a second. But I want to mention a tweet from Raymond Lynch. I met Raymond and his partner at Wake Up Manchester a few weeks ago. Two lovely guys. Raymond, how are you, my friend? Love the Twitter picture, by the way. You saucy devil. What Resign Cameron showed was the power of social media to mobilise people quickly. That has to be a good thing. It is, Raymond. It is. My big worry about social media is the level of control it extends to the tyranny, to the elite, to the cabal. They ultimately control it. It's their toy. And we're playing with their toy. But it ultimately belongs to them. That's why I worry about it. I can't believe Doc has just mentioned Ian Dale as well. Oh, we'll come to Ian Dale in a minute. That slimy son of a... I'll read a few more tweets out, shall I? Marco says, a walk from the north to the south, picking up protesters along the way, but who's going to take the responsibility for that? David Stanford says, as the great Jordan Maxwell points out, Semitism doesn't exist, so how can there be anti-Semitism? Good morning, Zana in New Zealand, or it's good afternoon to you. Late this afternoon. Karen says, the Who owns Scotland is very big up here since the referendum. Brilliant to know that. People are getting out and doing stuff. Karen, I'm thrilled about that. My good friend Himanshi is saying that the internet has stopped working in India, meaning that she's not able to listen to the show right now. That's a pity. But you're on Twitter, though. How does that work? Anyway, the podcast will be up shortly anyway. You know the way it is. Right, let me tell you about these people. So Ian Dale then presents for LBC. Ian is a gay man. Why is that relevant, Richie? Of course, it isn't. It shouldn't be. Nobody's sexuality should be relevant to anything about them unless you dig a little bit deep down and have a look. What I found out about Ian Dale was Ian Dale in the mid to late 1970s and early 1980s as a young man hung around the Conservative Party in London. He hung around with them a lot. Okay, he was heavily involved. He was a young Tory. He was infatuated with Margaret Thatcher. And this is at a time when Tim Fortescue, the former chief whip of the Conservative Party under Edward Heath, when Fortescue was saying it was common practice for MPs to come and say, I've been buggering young boys, please help me out. Now, Ian Dale is not suspected of, by me or anybody else, of having anything to do with paedophilia. Not in a million years. I interviewed Ian Dale on the radio a few years ago about his Margaret Thatcher books. Ian Dale is an idiot. But he's not, a sinister idiot, not in that way at all. Why Ian Dale pisses me off is because he regularly goes on his LBC programme saying that child sex abuse and the stories that have come out about child sex abuse in this country are a myth, they are a fabrication, and they are a witch hunt against the establishment. I say this, and I said it on Twitter until he blocked me. I was polite. Don't tell me, Ian, that hanging around the Tory party in the 70s and 80s, you didn't know that boys were being buggered by some of the old boys. Some of the good old boys, Ian. You must have heard something. Especially when Tim Fortescue was saying it was fucking happening all the time. I couldn't even go to work without there being a queue of MPs outside the door going, please get me out of this one. Right. Why has he pissed me off today? Because today he said Cameron is being attacked because of aspirations. We are no longer an aspirational society. We should aspire to make the sort of money and the success that Cameron and his wife Samantha and their family made. All that great success using their intelligence, using their God-given talents to make a lot of money for them and for their family. Ian, you fucking liar. Let's talk about who these people really are. All of them have connection to the aristocracy. Every fucking one of them are related to the royal family one way or another and the upper echelons of the British military. You get what I'm saying? None of these people started off with bugger all. You know, they started off with bugger all, and through sheer hard work and talent they made it. It's the greatest lie ever sold to the British people. It was never a level playing field. Look at the historic money, the family trees of all of these people. Look at it. Her family, Samantha Cameron, traced it back. His family, hundreds and hundreds of years, all being stolen from the British people, stolen through the British Empire overseas. Bequeathed to earls and to peers and to lords and to fucking ladies. They did it in Ireland. The bastards the fuckers still have land in Ireland. These people are more talented than you. Don't be so fucking lazy. You should aspire to be like them. That's what Ian Dale wants you to believe. Eh? Fuck off. Fuck right off. These people are not more intelligent than you. They are not more talented than you. They are the sons and daughters, and they are the great-grandsons and great-granddaughters of fucking tyrants. Do a family tree search on any of these bastards. Come back and tell me about aspirations. Fuck off. Corbyn was on Andrew Marr this morning, as you know. This is what he had to say about Cameron's money.
You can't point at any issue where the Prime Minister has not paid his taxes, can you?
I want to see the papers. We need to know what he's actually returned as a tax return. We need to know why he put this money overseas in the first place and whether he made anything out of it or not before 2010 when he became Prime Minister. These are questions that he must answer. I think there is a question for Parliament there. There is a question for parliamentary standards to question him on this. There is a question, big questions that have to be put to him by Parliament, and that surely is the function of Parliament.
Do you think he's been lying in any way about the money that he's had in the past?
Through his teeth.
I think he took an awful long time to say what money he had in those trusts, what money was given to him by his family, what money he's received as a result of it, and what tax he's paid on it. There's been a series of rather changing stories coming out of Downing Street. There's been roughly a statement every 18 to 24 hours since last Monday on this. I don't know why he couldn't say the whole thing last Monday, but he's still not finished yet because he hasn't actually said exactly how much tax he did or didn't pay.
Yeah, whatever you do, Corbyn, remain calm and just mumble your fucking way through these interviews. Unbelievable. Ken Livingstone, the former mayor of London. Well, Ken says Cameron should be in prison. Tell us something we don't know, Ken.
I think it's incredibly damaging because if you look at this, all this started with Mrs Thatcher. She stopped all the regulation. People were allowed to move their money abroad, start not paying their taxes. And Cameron's father just spent 30 years laundering money through Panama and didn't pay a penny of tax to Britain. And then his son was in denial, refusing to be honest about all of this. I do think Cameron is most probably the most hypocritical Prime Minister of my lifetime. I think he should have resigned right when he started his term of office. It's been the most damaging government. It's huge damage to the poorest people, to communities that desperately need investment and so on. Cameron's government for the last 6 years has been about a small elite getting richer whilst the poorer get left behind. He shouldn't just resign, he should be sent to prison.
He should be sent to prison, says Ken Livingstone. Well, you know, we like due process, Ken. Be nice to arrest him, level some charges at him, and give him the opportunity to answer them in a trial of his peers. Maybe not a trial of his peers, maybe. You know, the greatest bit of spin I've ever heard in my life, outside of Alistair Campbell and the weapons of mass destruction and all of that. Since then, the greatest bit of spin I've heard was on breakfast television yesterday morning, BBC interviewing a guy called Nick Bowles. Nick Bowles is the skills minister. Listen to this. The guy should be ashamed of his life. How did they put him up to doing this? You remember Chemical Alley? Saddam Hussein's henchman. Do you remember the guy who said everything was on the up and up when everything was going bad? Great spinster, right? Listen to Nick Bowles. Apparently, everything Cameron has done has been about protecting the good name of his daddy.
And the question is, why on day one, on Monday, didn't the Prime Minister give us the full picture? That is the question.
And I
he loves his
answer that
daddy.
question, which is that people have been attacking his father, who spent a
No,
career
this is
in
not about his
stockbroking.
father. This is about his statement on Monday. This is about what he said. Nothing to do with what his father did.
No, I think it is entirely about his father, because the whole focus of people's attention has been this particular investment trust that was set up by his father, in which he held some units which were sold in 2010. That is what the whole story is about, is this investment trust that his father set up. And I think that the Prime Minister's natural instinct as a son was to try and protect the reputation of his father, who is dead and not able to defend himself from attacks from the press, which only come not because of anything that his father did, but because his son has become Prime Minister. So that was his natural human reaction. Now, he probably might himself wish that he had been more forthcoming about all of the detail on that very first day. But
You have to be some whore, don't you, to be Nick Bowles there. Peter, what's his name again? Nick Bowles, yeah. To be sent out to face the media and to be told to say that. What opinion do you have of yourself that you say to the whip or whoever put him up to going on television to defend Cameron? How low do you have to be to say, all right, yeah, I'll go on and I'll put that defence across? Sickening, isn't it? Sickening. Not an ounce of stomach, not an ounce of heart. Right, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take another quick break. When I come back, I'm going to tell you about libraries. You're not going to like it. It's very, very serious. This is the Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIke.com. Check out DavidIke.com/headlines. Back in a minute.
Have you lost access to important data from a computer hard drive, mobile phone, or other storage device? Maybe you have a broken hard drive containing years of information, or a smartphone that no longer works from which you'd like the pictures, movies, and chats recovered. If you would like to recover data from any type of digital device, including desktop and laptop computers, external hard drives, cameras, smartphones, NAS and RAID servers, then contact Data Clinic today at dataclinic.co.uk now.
Do you want to release the full potential of your soul consciousness and find out how to experience that power in all areas of your life now? Go to livingasyoursoul.com for free guidance with in-depth how-to articles, free healing meditations of creation recordings, free soul solutions, and much, much more. livingasyoursoul.com, making the profound practical.
Broadcasting the information the mainstream media won't touch. This is The Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIke.com.
And we're live. It's 12 and a half minutes to the top of the hour. Good morning, Dominic Blackburn. How you doing, Dominic? Forget Cameron Gate. The world should be on the streets demanding change when 62 people own more than 3.5 billion people. Yeah. Oh, yes, mate, absolutely right. Good morning, Ronan the Barbarian. How are you, mate? Good to see you. Yes, the Perception Deception by David Icke. Unbelievable information in there. It is believable, but the amount of info in there about the family connections of the elite, absolutely spot on, Ronan. That's available at davidike.com as well. It's nearly 1,000 pages in length, is the amazing Perception Deception. Right. Few tweets I might have missed. Kenny Meaden, how you doing, Kenny? Nice to hear from you. Loving the passion today, he says in the programme. Thanks for that, Kenny. It's genuine, mate. I'm not putting it on. It drives me mad, to be honest. You know, who these people are. The idea that Ian Dale from LBC has the absolute front to go on national television and say we should aspire to be like these people. You know, when that's perpetuating the myth. Again, I use that phrase all the time, to perpetuate the myth that these people earned what they have. No, they didn't. The fucker stole it. Not just here, not just in Ireland, but everywhere around the world. All of these people, look at these people, who they are and where they come from. How did they get in charge? You know how they got in charge? We were asleep. Kim came back on to say, if it hadn't been for RT, I wouldn't have known anything about the protest yesterday. Russia today is what the BBC was 40 years ago, says Kim. Thanks, Kim. Interesting point, yeah. Some of our listeners mightn't agree with that, but I know where you're coming from. Some very good journalism on the channel Russia Today, no doubt about that. Paul came back on to say, decent, aspirational, hard-working people who love their daddies, not a shred of corruption or privilege amongst them, says Paul. Dripping with sarcasm, Paul, dripping with sarcasm. And indeed, you're absolutely 100% right. You couldn't be any more right. Now, I talked to you last week about this. It's a massive story. It is massive, by the way. This is huge. And when Karen and myself were meeting our friends Haley and Brian in Stockport yesterday, it brought it home to me. Because when you come out of Stockport train station, what do you see, dear listener, when you come right out of the train station? You see the beautiful Stockport Library. Libraries are being destroyed by this government. They are being underfunded to the point where they will collapse. And we saw this in London in 2013, because we were living in North London, in North Wembley. It's not really North London. We were living in North Wembley at the time, David, myself, Caroline, and there was a library near us. There were some wonderful people trying to keep it alive, because the funding had basically been taken away from it. Right? So, Channel 4 News yesterday, Cassie Newman, I think, was the presenter, spoke to Francesca Simon, whom I found out wrote the Horrid Henry series of books, and also Kate Andrews. Andrews is from the Institute of Economic Affairs. Andrews is dreadful now. Don't start shouting at me. We know who she is. Sky News commentator, horrible human being. She's dreadful. But have a listen to some of this. I sound like Trump now, don't I? He's horrible. Everybody you don't agree with is terrible. She is terrible, by the way. Trump has more hair than me. Right, so Cassie Newman speaking with Francesca Simon, the author of Horrid Henry, and Kate Andrews from the Institute of Economic Affairs. This is about 2 minutes long. Listen, it's very well worthwhile listening to.
So should libraries be kept open as a community resource? I'm joined now by Francesca Simon, the best-selling children's author of the Horrid Henry series, and Kate Andrews from the Institute of Economic Affairs. Francesca first, and just to declare an interest, the Carnegie is my local library. But why did you cross the river to defend it?
Crossing the river, indeed. Well, I feel really passionately about libraries. I think they are the hub of any community. It was fascinating just standing out there for 2 hours. The number of people who came from all walks of life to offer food and blankets and say, well done, and cars honking. Because the point is that libraries their primary purpose, of course, is for books. But they provide a place for all members of the community. I mean, I was in my local library with my son at least twice a week. There are play groups there. There's story time. They're wonderful for elderly people, for unemployed people. So it's one of the only community services, I think, that's used by the entire community.
Kate Andrews, this unites people, and we need that in this day and age, don't we?
Well, some people are using it, but the problem, of course, is that most people in the community aren't using libraries anymore. What we see from the figures are that fewer and fewer people are going to the library every year, and the ones that are going are not even taking out books. That number is negligible compared to people even walking in. And that tells us that people are choosing to access their knowledge in different places. This is actually a wonderful thing. The fact that you and I can get information on our phone and our computers now is a wonderful luxury. It doesn't mean there's not a place for libraries, but they have to modernize because people don't want to use them for the same
libraries
reasons.
are modern. I mean, all libraries have computers, but I think you're completely...
But that's not where people want to be using the computer. They want to use it at home.
You're completely wrong about why people use libraries. You think that you're going into a library to access something very specific. Libraries are places that you browse. Libraries are places where you discover things you didn't even know you were looking for. And children do not read books on Kindle. I've just got my royalty statements. I would say for the last 5 or 6 years, under 5% of all my royalties are for ebooks, downloads. The vast majority is always from books. Now, I am a big best-selling author for ages 5 to 8.
Let me tell you what's going on. Closing public libraries is a crime against children, but it's also a crime against the poor. Yet another crime against the poor. Why, you cry? Why? Well, the public library, I would have thought anyway, remains a place where one can access free education if one chooses to. A gift, of course, if you don't have the means to go on to third level education. But this is what, again, and I go back to David and David's writings for years, closing libraries and limiting access to books and hundreds of years of teaching, thousands of years of teaching. The elite can control what it is you learn. Their version of history and their version of what is possible. That's what this is really all about, isn't it? Isn't it? And it's an outrage. It's an outrage. Underfunding libraries is no different to dictators and fascists over the years burning books. It's the same thing. It's an outrage. And it's getting zero coverage. Apart from that little interlude on Channel 4 News, fair play to them for doing it. By and large, nobody's talking about it. You know, one of the biggest stories of the week. You know, I've been asked by David Mortimer to mention this. Go to childrenscreamingtobeheard.com. That's childrenscreamingtobeheard.com. It's all about the Children Screaming to Be Heard conference, which takes place on the 23rd of April at the Resource for London Centre. All the information is on Children Screaming to Be Heard. It's all about forced adoption and fostering. I'll say it again, Children Screaming to Be Heard. I've just retweeted that, so you can find it there. I want to say good morning to Daniel Ford. Good morning, Daniel. Daniel says libraries are being phased out to digitise and regulate informations. Kids don't read per transhumanism. That's right. That's absolutely right. And Stevie was on to say, oh, it's that bint that's always on the big questions. Bint. Love that word. Love that word. Doc says it's another way of breaking down our communities. It is. It is. And I want to finish with this today, the European Union. And the £9.3 million spent by the British government to send propaganda leaflets into the letterboxes or through the letterbox of every household in Britain to tell us we should stay in the European Union. 9.3 million they spent. Peter Lilly is a Tory. He doesn't like it, and he's a Tory. Have a listen to Peter Lilly. He was speaking with Russia Today.
Why is it an unfair advantage when, in fact, the other opposing view will be given public money to tell their side of the story, and that will happen soon?
They'll be given £700,000. This is £9 million. And they will be allowed to spend up to £7 million each campaign, but a maximum of that if they can raise that money from private individuals. Well, that's right and proper. It should be left to private individuals in a free society.
Government has done this for every referendum since 1975. It's spent money, indeed, telling the public what its position is. So what's different this time?
It's not a huge difference, but it was pretty disgraceful in the past. It's much better in a free society that the government stands to one side and lets the different viewpoints take any more than at a general election. We don't let the government spend £10 million saying why it should be re-elected. And limiting the amount that other parties can say why they should be elected instead. So why should it be different in a referendum from what it is in a general election?
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. I want to say good morning to Paul Dilly, by the way. Paul, thanks very much for your email. Bye-bye, Cameron. Fingers crossed, says Paul. Paul, I understand it, and I don't want to rain on your parade. There's a bevy. There is a parade of world-class, Machiavellian, evil lunatics waiting to follow him, mate. But I understand it. I really do. Speaking about the European Union, Jeremy Corbyn, again, he was on Andrew Marr's BBC 9am bloody programme this morning. And we already heard from Corbyn talking about Cameron. We already heard Corbyn talk about anti-Semitism. This is Corbyn talking about the European Union, but also he mentions TTIP in a very interesting way. Have a listen.
We want people to vote to remain in the EU so that we can develop a social Europe, a just Europe. We can protect the workers' rights advances that have been made, but we're also in a position to argue for the protection of workers' rights and public services should the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership ever come along, and that we would seek to ensure there is a social Europe, there is universal environmental protection, and there is protection of the advances we've made on workers' protection over the past few years.
Did you hear that? You did. Did you hear Corbyn mention TTIP there? Do you want to hear it again? I won't play it for you again. He said we need to be in the European Union so that we're in a position to negotiate if TTIP comes around. So am I to understand then, dear listener, that Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party are not going to do anything to prevent TTIP being signed into law and into effect, and basically flushing any last notion or semblance of democracy down the toilet? Jeremy Corbyn is not working for you. I don't know who Jeremy Corbyn is. Like I said before, I like his brother Piers. I like a lot of what Piers says. I like some of the things Corbyn allegedly stands for, but I don't see him standing for those things since he assumed the office of leader of the opposition. Now he's talking about TTIP coming in, and we need to be there working on the negotiations. Not we shouldn't be in TTIP, or we shouldn't have anything to do with it. Representative democracy doesn't exist. You can never change the paradigm at the ballot box, no matter what you do. I'm not going to go into a rant about that because I did that last week. Pippa King came back on. Pippa, thanks very much for this. Getting rid of libraries threatens home education. We used our local library a lot when we home educated. Brilliant comment. Didn't occur to me there. You're right. Kate Coley, pal of mine. Kate, we must have a drink again. We're not too far from one another. Kate says, I'm an author and the vast majority of the books I've sold were ebooks. You can get ebooks from the library, says Kate. Thanks for that comment, Kate. Let's see, what else have we got there before I wrap it up. Anne Selly says, thank you, Anne. Send your pamphlets back to the Conservatives at their headquarters, 4 Matthew Parker Street, London, SW1H 9HQ. And I've just retweeted Anne's comment there. That's it for Sunday View in association with davidicke.com/headlines. Claire Calvey and myself have lined up a terrific week of guests for you on the Richie Allen radio show next week. Dr. John Hall is on the programme. Alfred Weber is back. John Perkins, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, is on the programme. And the great David Icke joins me tomorrow, Monday, for the entire show. Join David and myself tomorrow, Monday, at 8 p.m. BST. From me, and from everybody associated with the Richie Allen radio show and everybody attached to Sunday View, thanks for listening to us. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I've really enjoyed your company. Thanks for the tweets. I will see you tomorrow at 8 p.m. BST. Bye for now.
Broadcasting the information the mainstream media won't touch. This is The Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIcke.com.